You are 6 years old, and Papa has stopped polishing his boots. The war ended 9 winters ago, but it still walks behind him like a shadow wearing his old uniform. He smells of tobacco, wool, and wood smoke, not altogether unpleasant, but always. Tired Dot, you live in a cottage outside of Kingston, New York. The Hudson River curves like a ribbon of pewter, and Mama's rose bushes refuse to grow since 1872. Papa rarely speaks. But sometimes at breakfast, he watches your hands. Not your face, just your hands. As if they remind him of something. Maybe someone, Dot, and though your neighbors say he's a fine, quiet man, you know, silence isn't always peace. It's just a different kind of battle. Asterisk, you first noticed the hollowness when he stopped yelling Dot. It used to be the clock ticked to the rhythm of his voice. Loud, sharp commands echoing from the porch to the barn and back, as if he were still commanding troops, instead of chickens and children. But now, the house is too quiet. So quiet that the creak of the pantry door startles the cat, and even the wind thinks twice before rattling the windows. You're 6 years old, and you understand more than you let on. Papa has stopped polishing his boots. They're stacked beneath the hallway bench now, covered in a fine layer of dust. One of them has a tear near the sole, and the leather has dulled to the same shade as the November sky. You remember when he used to sit for an hour each Sunday, brushing them until they shone like chestnuts in the sun. Mama said he was a proud man once. She says it differently now, like she's remembering a ghost instead of a husband. And perhaps she is, because what came home from the war in 1865 wasn't the same man who left in 61. That man had strong hands, hard eyes, and laughter that cracked through the trees. This one wears silence like a second skin. You try not to disturb him. When you play with your rag doll, you do it behind the parlor curtain, your giggles muffled by old lace. When you spill flour in the kitchen, you sweep it fast before he notices. You're not afraid of him, no, never afraid, but you fear the weight of his quiet, the way it fills the room like heavy snow, muffling every color and sound. He sits by the window most mornings, in the same chair, with the same empty pipe. He doesn't smoke anymore, just holds it, turns it in his fingers like he's waiting for a memory to light it again. Papa, you once asked? It was autumn. You were brave. You just learned how to. Tie your shoes. He turned to you slowly. His eyes found yours. Did you win? A pause, a long one. The wind rattled the maple leaves like tamarines outside. He looked out again, past you, through you, maybe into a field full of men you'd never meet. No one wins a war, little one, he said. Then nothing more. Today he stopped yelling. Mama burned the bacon. She cried in the pantry, thinking you couldn't hear. You did. You always do. You begin to mark the days by the things he does not do. He doesn't shave. His beard grows in patches, like moth-bitten wool. He doesn't whistle. He doesn't check the fence. He doesn't sing when he feeds the chickens. Sometimes he doesn't eat, but always, he sits by the window, looking, waiting. You begin to draw him. With your stub of charcoal and a torn sheet of newspaper, you sketch the hollow curve of his shoulders, the droop of his brow, the shadows under his eyes. You do it not to mock, but to understand. And then, one day, he notices. You'd left your drawing by mistake on the kitchen table. A rough sketch, scribbled while you waited for the cornbread to rise. He picks it up, stares at it. The line of his mouth doesn't change. He looks at you, then at the paper again. You see too much, he murmurs, not unkindly. Just shrewd out you. Want to say, I see enough. But you're 6, so you just nod. That night, he asks if you want to hear a story. You almost drop your bowl. He hasn't told a story since before you could remember. Mama peeks in from the hallway. her hands still dusted with flour. You sit on the floor near his feet. He begins slowly. Something about a soldier and a letter and a mistake. His voice is scratchy, like it hasn't been used in years. But you hang on every word. He doesn't finish the story. He falls asleep mid-sentence. But it's the best story you've ever heard. From then on, he begins to speak. Not much, but enough. He tells you about his horse Old Latch and how it once bit a general on the ear. He tells you about Tennessee, where the trees never lost their leaves, and about a man named Eli who could catch a trout with his hands. You begin to ask questions. He doesn't always answer, but he listens, and when you come home from school, there's a cup of tea waiting. Weak, watery, but warm. The boots remain under the bench, but now they've been polished. You start to understand him by the way he moves. The house doesn't creak so much anymore. That's not because it's sturdier. It's because you've learned its music. The way the floorboards sigh in the hallway near Mama's sewing room. The whisper of the back door catching on its hinge in the breeze. You walk softer, now not because you must, but because you've become part of the rhythm. Just like him, he still rises before the sun. You hear it in the soft clink of the kettle. On the stove, the almost silent swish of the curtains being drawn back, the hush of the door opening to the porch. Sometimes you sit on the edge of your bed, blanket around your shoulders, and just listen to the quiet that is full of him. You are 7 now, and you're learning that love can be quiet too. When he tends the garden, he does it like he's caring for something sacred. Each row of turnips is a memory. Each tomato plant a friend he left behind. He doesn't say that out loud, of course, but you can see it in the way he pauses before placing each seed, as if he's telling it a secret. Mama has started humming. Again, it's faint, and only while she works the dough or irons Papa's old uniforms for storing. But it's there. The tune is always the same, the one she used to sing when you were a baby, down in the valley. Her voice wavers when she hits the high notes, but it makes the whole house feel warmer. You start making up stories. You whisper them to your doll, to the chickens, to the cat. You write them in your head while helping Mama shell peas. The best stories are the ones where Papa is whole again. Not like before the war, no. Not even he wants that, but better. Softer. Still brave, but kind. In your stories, he saves a boy from drowning. He returns a lost dog to a crying girl. He mends a broken chair in the schoolhouse just because he can. Sometimes you read the Bible aloud just to fill the space. You like the parts with Joseph in his dreams. Papa listens, even if he pretends he isn't. When you reach the part about forgiveness, his thumb twitches. He starts carving again. It begins with a spoon. A simple one, made from birchwood. Its curve a little lopsided, but it's smooth. Then a fork. Then a little horse for you, painted with leftover blacking from his boots. You name it Latch, after his warhorse, and he chuckles. You remember that, do you? You nod. You told me. He smiles, sort of, gets crooked, and it disappears. Fast. But it's there. One day, he takes you fishing. It's still spring. The ice just finished melting on the pond behind Old Man Muller's field. You wear your red shawl and carry a lunch of boiled eggs and biscuits. He doesn't talk much on the way there, but he shows you how to bait the hook, how to sit real still, how to wait. You don't catch anything, but he laughs when you fall. In trying to pull out your line. First rule of fishing, little one, he says, helping you up. Don't stand on a muddy rock. That night, he wipes your feet with a towel and tucks you in himself. Mama watches from the hallway. Her eyes shine in the lamplight. Sometimes the quiet turns into a storm. It happens after the thunder. One of those heavy summer nights where the clouds roll in fast and the air smells like burnt sugar. You wake to shouting. Garbled words. Something about fire, about brothers. The sound of a chair tipping, a plate smashing. You peek down the hallway. He's on the floor, breathing hard. Mama is kneeling beside him, saying his name over and over like a prayer. He doesn't see you, or her. His eyes are somewhere far off. You want to run to him, but your feet won't move. The next morning, no one talks about it. The chair is righted. The plate is gone. Papa is in the garden, whispering to his tomato plants. Mama hums down in the valley, but slower. You don't ask that you write about it in your journal instead. You call it The Storm Inside. It's your best title yet. You give him the story. You fold it neatly and place it on the kitchen table where he'll find it. He doesn't say anything that night. But the next morning, there's a paper crane on your plate, folded from the same page. You never mention it. You start reading poetry. Mr. Walsh from the schoolhouse lends you a book by Emily Dickinson. You like how the poems are small, but they make your chest feel big. You copy them in chalk on the fence posts. Papa reads them while feeding the chickens. You know because sometimes he erases your commas and fixes the meter. The world grows larger, but the house stays the same. Your hands grow bigger. You're allowed to help with more chores. You churn the butter, gather eggs, sweep the porch. But you still draw him. You draw him planting beans. You draw him walking with Mama. You draw him from memory, smiling. You ask him what makes him happiest. He thinks for a long time. Peace, he says finally. And you. Then he clears his throat and goes back to carving. You watch the seasons change by the color of his beard. It's grayer now, thinner, but he walks straighter than he used to. Sometimes he whistles when he thinks no one's listening. Your 8th birthday, he gives you a box. Inside is a tiny music box carved from cherry wood. When you wind it, it plays Down in the Valley. You don't cry, but Mama does. Quietly, behind her apron. Later, you find Papa in the barn. I don't know much about birthdays, he says, but I know you made it through another year. And that matters. You hug him. He holds you like he's afraid he'll break you. You saved me, you know, he whispers. You don't answer. Just press your cheek against his chest and listen to the quiet between the notes. And for once, you both hear the same song. The air is different after your 8th birthday. Not louder, not exactly, but filled. Like the way a sponge feels heavy with water. The kind of quiet that isn't empty, but waiting. And what it's waiting for, you can't always tell. Papa speaks more now, but not always in words. He shows you how to polish the old radio that hasn't worked in years. He teaches you how to sand in circles, small and steady, with even pressure. He doesn't explain why it matters, just that it does. You learn that sometimes doing something with care is its own kind of speech. He keeps whittling. The projects become more detailed. A sparrow, a pair of clasped hands, a tiny violin you wear on a string around your neck. Mama says he's carving out his past, piece by piece, until he can live with what's left. You think maybe she's right. But some days, the past catches up. One morning, you find him standing in the middle of the field, facing east. His hands are still, but his shoulders tremble. You call to him. Once, twice. He doesn't answer. You walk up, slip your hand into his. He squeezes back like he's returning from a place you can't see. You don't ask where he went. He doesn't tell. That night, he doesn't eat. He doesn't sleep. He just sits on the porch, staring at the stars. Mama doesn't force him. Inside, she places a blanket over his shoulders and leaves him be in the morning. He's planting again. Singing low and rough. You learn that grief can have good days too. Mr. Walsh gives you another book. This one is full of letters soldiers wrote during the war. You read each one slowly, feeling the spaces between the sentences. You begin writing. Letters not to anyone in particular, just to the sky. You fold them into boats and float them down the creek. Sometimes Papa finds them before they drift too far. He dries them and tucks them into his old war chest. He never says he does, but you see the lid move. Mama bakes more now. Pies mostly. Peach, rhubarb, sometimes apple if the trees yield enough. She says the house needs more sweetness. You agree. You try baking too, but your crusts are too thick. Papa eats them anyway, smiling like they're the best things he's ever tasted. You start keeping a dream journal in your dreams. The house sings. Not loudly, but with gentle humming, like it's breathing. Papa laughs in your dreams, big, belly-deep laughs that shake the floor. Sometimes you wake up crying. Sometimes you wake up hopeful. You ask Mama about the past. She tells you what she can. About the telegram. About the days she didn't eat. About the months she wore gray. About how she thought the war took him, and how it nearly did again when he came back. You nod, absorbing each word like it's part of a story you were born into. A legacy written in silence and stitching, and spoons carved from sorrow. You start helping Papa with his carving. He lets you pick the wood. He teaches you to read the grain, to listen to what the wood wants to become. Your first project is a small bird with wings spread wide. It breaks in half. You cry. He hugs you. Not all things are meant to hold, he says. But that doesn't mean they weren't worth making. You write that in your notebook. You underline it twice. Papa starts. Going into town again, not just for nails, or twine, or salt, but it's something. He doesn't like being around too many people, but he always brings back something small for you. A thimble, a pencil, a folded map of a place he's never been. You begin asking questions you once kept inside. Did it hurt? He doesn't answer at first, just looks out the window. Yes, he says finally, not the way you think. You don't press. You just sit beside him, the space between you warm. One afternoon, he builds you a shelf for your books. It's simple, sturdy, the edges smooth. You decorate it with flowers. He pretends to protest, but helps you arrange the petals. And one day, the letter comes. It's from the government. About benefits, about service, about recognition. He reads it once, then sets it down. That paper don't know me, he says. The next day, he wears his old uniform and sits with you on the porch. He tells you the names of every man he served with, everyone he lost. You don't interrupt. You just hold his hand. Afterward, he says, I was scared I'd forget their faces. You didn't. You say, no, he whispers. Not with. You hear. You're almost 9 now, and you understand that some healing is circular. Like music, like dreams, like love that doesn't end, only returns. You start carving too. That your first full piece is a girl holding a bird. You give it to him. He doesn't say anything, but you find it in the barn later, placed carefully on his shelf beside a spoon, a horse, and a folded letter. And in the quiet between you both, you feel the weight of unspoken words and know they are full of love. You are 10 now, and the world is louder. The trains scream louder when they pass through, even though they've always sounded the same. The church bells clang brighter. The schoolyard echoes harder. Or maybe it's you who changed your ears, tuned to different things now. Not just to sound, but to meaning. It begins with a letter. A white envelope. Government stamp. Mama reads it first, her fingers trembling like pine leaves in frost. She doesn't speak. Just hands it to him. He doesn't read it aloud, but you watch his jaw tighten and his hand fold the paper into a perfect square. What does it say? You ask, but no one answers. That night, he sharpens his boots, brushes his coat, lays out a uniform he hasn't worn in years. The next morning, he he leaves. Not with words or kisses, or even his usual, "Watch the chickens." Just a nod, a breath, a long glance back. He is gone for 4 days. You spend them watching the road, counting clouds, pretending the cat speaks French. Anything to distract from the fear ballooning in your chest. When he returns, he's carrying a box and walking like his bones hurt. He doesn't talk about where he went, but the box stays on the mantel. Unopened, you think it smells faintly of smoke. He begins to walk into town, more, sometimes with a list from Mama Sugar, flour, ribbon, sometimes with no reason at all. You think he's chasing something, or maybe outrunning something. You watch the way he stands in the yard before leaving, as if waiting for permission from the ghosts that still sleep near the tomato patch. You follow him once. You keep a safe distance, pretending to be on an adventure. You imagine yourself in a storybook, the little spy and her wandering father. You crouch behind woodpiles, hop fence rails. When he enters the bakery, you hide behind barrels. You don't expect what comes next. He hugs someone, a man, younger, arm in a sling. They laugh, both of them. The sound is rough but real. You feel like you're watching something private, and you turn away. Later, you ask him what it means to have brothers who aren't born from the same mama. He looks at you a long time before answering. Sometimes, blood is just ink, he says. And sometimes shared silence is thicker than anything God could sow. You don't ask again. But in your drawings, you begin to add faces you've never met. Autumn settles in like a well-folded quilt. The trees wear fire. Your schoolteacher says you write like someone twice your age. You begin collecting words the way some girls collect shells. Mend, remnant, reverie. One day, he lets you sit beside him as he carves. He gives you your own piece of wood, a small knife. His hand covers yours as he shows you how not to slice too deep. Start with something small, he says. Even God began with light. You carve a bird, or you try. It ends up looking like a tired potato. He laughs. Still better than my first. A man arrives from Albany. He wears a bowler hat and smells of cigars. He talks to your father behind closed doors. Mama offers tea, but no one drinks. After he leaves, Papa disappears into the barn. You find him hours later, staring at the rafters. What did he want? You ask. To remember me, he replies. Or to make me disappear? Hard to tell with men like that. You discover the box on the mantel is full of medals. You find it by accident. Cleaning, dusting. The lid falls open and gold winks up at you. Ribbons of red and blue. You don't know what they mean, only that they're heavy. He finds you holding. One? You earned these? You whisper. No, he says. I survived them. The war comes back in pieces. A man with half a face at the train station. A parade that makes Papa wince. The way the preacher's words on Sunday sound. Too much like commands. You start to write again. This time it's about the war, not the battles, the after. You write of boots lined up like gravestones, of dreams that taste like iron, of hugs that shape. You leave one poem on his workbench. The next day. Your bird potato has a wing. Mama sings more now. Not just down in the valley, but new songs. Songs of rivers and returns and rain. Your house is still quiet, but not empty. He talks. More. Tells you about a man named Jasper who could play the fiddle with his toes. About Miss Liddy who baked pies on the battlefield. About how not all battles are won by swords. He takes you to the field beyond the orchard. This is where I buried the uniform, he says, the one I came home in. You ask why? Because some cloth holds too much memory. You are 10, and the echoes don't scare you as much now. You know that some ghosts just want to be heard, and you are learning how to listen. The light in the house is golden, now softer than it used to be. Or maybe it's your eyes that have changed. You're nearly 15, tall enough to see out over the garden fence without climbing on the stump. You still draw faces mostly, and trees, and sometimes the same little horse your father carved you when you were 7. Papa's hair is almost all white. His beard is smaller now, trimmed neatly with Mama's sewing scissors. He walks slower, but with more dignity, like each step has purpose. He laughs more. It's a dry kind of laugh, like rustling leaves, but real. You've memorized the sound of his stories. Not because he tells them often, he still chooses silence more than not, but because you've heard enough to fill in the blanks. The war was never just guns and blood. It was waiting. It was hunger. It was losing brothers not to bullets, but to frost. You learned that when he finally let you read the letter he never sent home. It was tucked in his coat pocket, yellowed, creased 100 times, addressed to no one, signed only Father. Mama hums louder now. She sings when she bakes, sings when she sweeps. Sometimes she even dances, just a little, when she thinks no one's looking. You once saw her spinning in the kitchen with flour on her nose. She saw you watching and laughed. Then she pulled you in. The two of you spun in circles until you fell. The house has changed too. There's a new chair in the parlor. It doesn't match, but it's Papa's favorite. He sits in it with a book of birds on his lap and a cat that insists it belongs to him now. The same cat you rescued from the mill road when you were 10. Papa says she reminds him of an old sergeant, always watching, never blinking. You talk. More now, all of you. Over supper, Papa asks about your day. You tell him about the new teacher, the one who wears a ribbon in her hair and cries when she reads poetry aloud. You tell him about Ada Weller's attempt to climb the schoolhouse roof and the way Billy Griggs keeps hiding frogs in people's lunch tins. Papa listens. He even laughs. One evening, he shows you a box dot. It's small, plain, carved from walnut. Inside are tiny treasures. A silver button from a uniform. A cracked marble. A piece of blue ribbon. A leaf. A note scrawled in pencil. Spring 1864, still breathing. You run your fingers over it all. He lets you. These are mine, he says. But they're yours too. You don't ask why. You just nod out. The garden grows wider every year. Papa added another row this spring. Beans, mostly. Some carrots. You help him plant them. He still whispers to the seeds. You do too, now, just to keep the habit. On Sundays, he carves. Birds, mostly. Once, he gave you a bear. You asked if it meant anything. He said, only that I saw one once, and it didn't eat me. You both laughed. You get your first real journal. A leather-bound one with thick paper that smells like wood. You fill it with poems and drawings, and stories about girls with swords, and old men who turn into stars. You leave it open sometimes, hoping he'll read it. He does. He starts drawing again too. You find his sketches in the barn behind the grain sacks. Mostly landscapes. Sometimes a woman's face. You recognize her cheekbones. Mama in her younger years. You never mention it, but you start leaving your colored pencils where he can find them. There are days when the storm comes back. Nights when you hear him crying into his pillow. You don't peek down the hall anymore. You wait until morning, then bring him coffee without asking. He thanks you with his eyes. You walk together now, not far, just to the edge of the orchard. Sometimes he talks about the way the air smelled before the first charge, about the soup in winter and how they kept spirits up with a harmonica and an old joke about chickens. He never finishes the joke, but you always laugh, just in case. Your 16th birthday, he gives you a new spoon. The curve is perfect, the grain polished. It fits your hand like it was made for it. Not every gift has to be fancy, he says. Just honest. You kiss his cheek. He closes his eyes. That winter is hard. Ice clings to the window panes. The woodpile gets low. Mama gets sick for a while. You take care of the fire, of the garden tools, of Papa too. One night, he hands you a letter. It's for after, he says. You don't read it. Not then, but you keep it under your pillow. He pulls through. Mama does too. Spring comes like a promise. One morning, he joins you by the fence. You're drawing a picture of the barn. He looks at it for a long time. You've made something real, he says. You've made all this real again. He doesn't say more. He doesn't need to. Years later, you'll sit in that same chair, the mismatched one in the parlor. You'll have a child on your lap and a bird book in your hand. Outside, your daughter will hum Down in the Valley, and you'll smile, because you'll still hear the quiet between the notes, because you know what peace looks like, because you remember what it was like to be the daughter of a broken soldier who slowly, quietly came home. You're older now, telling this story to a sleepy child by your own fire. You don't say much about the war, only about the way Papa smelled like pipe smoke and river wind, how his hugs got tighter with age, and how even a broken soldier could raise a whole, loving daughter. And as you snuff the candle, you whisper, sometimes the strongest people are the ones who sit quietly beside you, even when they're hurting.